A new Boston City Council recently took office with a new president and some new policy goals. To tell us his plan for the year ahead is the council president and district councilor from Roxbury, Kim Janey. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Madam President. First of all, why did you want to be the president?
I think, so I'm not sure that I did want to become president so much as, well, I think there's real power in having the council presidency grounded in Roxbury. So I didn't necessarily seek it out and know in my first term that I definitely wanted to be president my next term. I knew in my second term I want to go deep in the district to continue to build. And I worried that the council presidency would take me away from that. But what I found, which is why I decided to go for it, was that the two can really be in concert with each other. And so this is the very first time in over 30 years that we have the council presidency grounded in Roxbury. And why that is important is Roxbury is the epicenter for many of the inequities, or the disparities rather, that we see throughout the city of Boston, right here in my district. And so to be able to ground the council presidency there and really focus the work on how we ensure that all of us in the city of Boston can truly thrive here, not just survive, but thrive. This is a wonderful city. We all know and love our city. We know that we're in an economic boom. There's a lot of construction happening, a lot of new development, a lot of corporations that want to move to Boston and set up their headquarters, and all of that is great. But if we see that for poor communities of color, they're still being left out of this economic boom, then what's it all for? And so I want to continue in this term as council president, pushing around policy change and really engaging folks in a discussion on how we lift up those who have been left behind and how we really focus on an economic justice agenda.
Well, you're not the first councilor to want to look more deeply into payments in lieu of taxes, the payments that come from hospitals and universities, but you know, there's a Roxbury perspective on that too, because we're talking about Northeastern and their expansion.
Absolutely. So Northeastern currently is looking to expand yet again. They want to build a tower in my district. Certainly, we have to concern ourselves with student housing. So student housing is important. Having universities in our city, that's important. They provide an incredible service, and that is great. What is problematic is when they don't fulfill their commitments when it comes to pilot. This tower, I have a different issue. It's 900 beds, kind of a luxury style housing, and we see too much of that going on already with our regular housing for residents of the city, and that is not the kind of housing we want to replicate when it comes to student housing. So there are a number of issues there with that tower. When it comes to pilot, Northeastern is certainly one of the big four. We need to make sure that all of our nonprofit partners are contributing to the vibrancy of this city, but also doing their fair share in terms of financial commitments. It is a voluntary program. There's an agreement between the city and the universities, and so I believe there's an opportunity, and I'm creating a new pilot committee to really give a platform for not just my colleagues on the council. We certainly care about this issue. It comes up a lot. You see in the last meeting that we had, there's an ordinance that has been put forth. But I want to give a platform not just to my colleagues, but also there are so many advocates that are doing amazing work in this space. So the Pilot Action Group has been around. They put forth that report, if you recall. And so this is an opportunity for us to review what is currently happening, see how we can strengthen it, see how we can make it more transparent, and how we can really hold folks accountable.
I want to ask about something that you did to hold the governor accountable just a couple of days ago, because Ayanna Pressley made some remarks at the MLK breakfast talking about her concerns around the divisive politics, even racially divisive politics that we're seeing more of in the country. At the same time, Governor Baker gets up, says, following that rant, and everybody, I'm sure you were one of the people going, what did he say?
Yeah, it's very disappointing. to use a word such as rant, which suggests anger, as a synonym for a tirade, for me, it brought up the angry black woman stereotype. And I find that problematic to try to cast all black women as angry. At the same time, I believe we as black women have every right to be angry, particularly at the hate and the divisiveness that is going on in our country, the fact that so many people are being left out of the prosperity that and the opportunity that is America. And so our Congresswoman was calling that out. And I agreed wholeheartedly with everything that she had to say. And to have, our leader of the Commonwealth just dismiss what she said. And maybe he was trying to make a joke, but in very poor taste. I think what our Congresswoman said was right, spot on, and I support what she said, and I found it very disappointing that we would use such a term that would bring up stereotypes and just be dismissive, and another way of silencing black women, and I find it just very problematic.
We also have this week a new report out about the long decline of school-age children in Boston. And two things that I didn't really quite pick up on before. One, that the biggest drop was in black students in the Boston public schools, that is, and also that the school system has become more racially segregated.
Yes, and we've been seeing this for a number of years. I mean, certainly in the 70s we saw white flight then, but there has been a steady decline and then this kind of plateau of where we are in terms of student population, in terms of just sheer numbers, but who those children are has changed dramatically. Obviously, we've had an influx of Latinx children, which is great, and that's due in large part to immigration. Many families coming from Central and South America coming to Boston and making Boston home, which is wonderful. We know that with many black families, in terms of the share of Boston public school kids, some are making other choices. We look at the charter schools. Many of the charter schools are filled with black and Latino kids in Boston. And we still saw the decline of white students. What continues to worry me is that we have an assignment plan in place now that was voted on, I believe it was 2014, that at the time when the school committee was taking this issue up, this is the home-based student assignment plan, many of us, I was one of the many advocates who raised concerns around equitable access to quality and how this new home-based plan would further isolate families in terms of race and income. If you have a smaller catchment area of which to choose from, and if our neighborhoods are already segregated by race and income because of a racist policy around housing, then again, no surprise that if we put in place a new plan that would restrict choice to a smaller geographic area, that we would in fact create even more racial segregation in our schools. And we've seen that. And I find that very problematic and hope that we are willing and ready to take steps to address that.
We have only a little bit of time, but you do have a meeting coming up next week about cannabis. Could you tell us a little more about the topic? And
this is a town hall. So as many folks know, cannabis was legalized in Massachusetts for adult recreational use in 2016. We don't have any shops open in Boston, but that will soon change. I believe there are some in the pipeline now scheduled to open. We certainly got my legislation passed during the last cycle, which was really around equity and how we ensure, if we're going to have this, how we ensure that community voice is incorporated, how we make sure that as these licenses are being distributed, that there's equity in terms of who can participate. The town hall is Tuesday, 6:30. It's at Black Market, which is 2136 Washington Street in Nubian Square in Roxbury. I hope people will come. And this is really just separate fact from fiction. We're going to have 52 shops potentially in Boston. What does that mean? What does it mean for the community? How can folks participate if people have concerns? What are their concerns? Let's separate the fact from fiction. Oftentimes we come into meetings, community meetings, and people will have their opinions, but it may not necessarily be based in fact and real data. And so it's important that we make sure that we have real information.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you so much.
City Council President.
Thank you.
Kim Janey.
All righty.
We'll have more news in
Thank
just a
you.
moment.